and welcome again to Atn Health Forum. Atn Health Forum is a compilation on critical health issues designed to reach all segments of the society and prefer solutions through the instrumentality of medical professionals. The show is segmented into three, the first segment being Educate, the second segment, Doctor and Me, and the third segment, Doctor Answers. As we already know, we will be discussing critical health issues, and to that effect, we have a special guest joining us today in person of Nurse Victor Oti. Welcome, Nurse Victor.
Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure. Today on the Educate segment, we will be discussing and learning about patient care and family engagement. On Doctor and Me segment, we'll be talking about the attitudes of patients and what could cause them to react in such a manner. And on Doctor Answers, which happens to be the last segment, we will be reading out a couple questions sent in by our viewers, and Nurse Victor will get to answer those questions, so you can do well to send yours in. But right now, we'll be going on a short break, and when we come back, we'll be diving right into the first segment on Educate. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Atn Health Forum on Atlantic Television Network. And today we have with us Nurse Oti in the building, and we'll be discussing patient care and family engagement. Nurse Victor, please, can you educate us on patient care and family engagement? I mean, in line of patient safety coming up on the 17th of September, would like to know how it feels or what it's like caring for patients and engaging families that come through the hospitals.
All right, thank you. Like she rightly said, my name is Nurse Victor Oti. I work in Department of Pediatrics, University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital. Okay, so let me walk you through what we have today on patient care and engagement of family. Before you begin to talk about this, you need to understand everything that has to do with patient care, and then you can now implement engaging the family. Okay. Now, patient care is what we, the health workers, do for patients, especially when they present to the hospital. At those moments, patients are actually really very vulnerable because of diseases, or sometimes also their anxieties to what they feel is the diseases they have. And sometimes they could also present without having no disease, and then they need to be reassured that there's no problem. All of these things are the reason an individual comes to the hospital. Okay. Like I will rightly say to everybody, that anybody can be a patient at any point in time, including the healthcare workers, provided you present to the hospital at any point in time and there is a disease or an anxiety to what you feel is not happening right in your body. So that's why you present. So at that point in time, you are called a patient. Now, what is patient care for us majorly is being able to administer or solve the problems of the patient, the health problem that the patient has actually presented with. And so for us to be able to do that, there are a few things that needs to be considered. One I would want to say is actually the right staffing. Now, when a patient presents to the hospital, it's very important that the patient meets the right staff. Okay, let's say in an emergency unit, the first person the patient is supposed to be seeing is the nurse who receives the patient. Now, let's look at the nurse who is at that point in time at an emergency section, being a newbie, not knowing his left or his right, or her left from her right. The same with the next person that is going to take up the care too. So the first point is hospital staffing. So who are you going to place at the point of reception of patient? So it's important that every leader understands hospital staffing. Now, when you're able to do this effectively, I mean staffing the hospital so that there will be healthcare workers who are there, then the next point is putting the right staff at the right place. Yeah. So if you're able to put the right staff in a particular place where the staff is should deliver care to the patient, that staff with the right knowledge is going to do their best, because you can't expect a good result and then put in a staff who is not able to do it. And let me cut this nail. You're not supposed to be in the healthcare, whether in the private or in the public sector, because most times we see people being trained and they call them auxiliaries and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I think the audience should also understand that they have the right to demand to know who is giving them care and how much training the person has, especially the basic training of going through the university, of going through the schools of nursing to be a hospital staff, especially for nurses and every other ones. I mean, we are seeing quacks everywhere, including in medicine, pharmacy, and so on and so forth. So it's important to understand right staffing. The next thing is empathy. Without empathy, you can't do so much in the healthcare field. And that's why most times you would always hear that healthcare workers are called to be there. That's not necessarily that nobody can actually do this job provided you're trained. But the thing is, there is an empathy that should be attached to care of a patient. If not, you will not be able to deliver effective care. And so for everyone to be able to, that person must, the healthcare workers must add empathy to everything they do. Another thing I want to point out is being prompt to action. I mean, a patient comes in, I'm just giving an example, and then you're not able to take actions that should help the patient. Of course, you may lose the patient because, I mean, if you don't know the patient, you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do for, and you don't take prompt action, you're going to lose that patient. Another thing I want to talk about is what we call hospital triaging. This one usually happens most times in the emergency unit. However, we also see it in other places. Who should see the doctor first? Who should receive care first? And all that. I mean, you receive, let's say, accident victims. You should be able to tag them and know who should receive immediate care and what care the person is supposed to be receiving at the time. So being able to triage every patient that presents is very important to be able to give holistic care to everyone who walks into the hospital. Remember, it's a function of who walks into the hospital and who is receiving care, not just an individual. Everyone who walks in at the various times they have walked in, you should be able to give them care and give them proper care. You know, most times patients don't even understand this, especially in the teaching hospital. And in my department, when we begin to tell them, okay, I understand that this person came before this person, but we need to attend to this person before this person. I mean, you need to explain all of these things before you are able to do them, because, I mean, they don't understand. So we call these things hospital triaging, because without hospital triaging, you may just lose a patient who would have benefited if you had done something earlier for this patient than you are doing for the next person. So if you put all these things together, you are going to be helping care for patients and then give the patients adequate care that they require. And that begins to bring us to engaging families when you're caring for a patient. Let me carefully point out that to engage patients, family, one of the things that are essential is communication. I mentioned that earlier, that you should be able to, especially when it comes to triaging, to be able to communicate to the population that you're taking care of, the community, that this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing at this point in time, so that they will cooperate with you. So what will communication do for you? Communication is going to help collaboration. If you don't communicate adequately, because, I mean, the healthcare workers can't do all this job alone. You need the family members, because every patient looks at the family member as their major support structures. You have the knowledge, you have everything, but remember that the family of this patient have been with this patient for a long time, especially for children. I mean, you can barely do nothing for these children if their parents are not around them. And sometimes you can't be said to have done or given a particular care when the parents didn't notice you give that care. they may feel neglected. So most times, even in the pediatric department, you want to always engage the parents, you want to always communicate, you want to always take both verbal and written consent, at the case may be, to be able to give whatever care you are going to give to a patient. Of course, I mean, it will save you from a lot of ethical legal issues, you know, if you are able to communicate at all times. Now, in our climb, healthcare is not just paid by the government. People source out money individually to pay for their healthcare. I mean, for what I have seen in the practice, just a few people working with the NHIS, NHIA, formerly NHIS, National Health Insurance Scheme, cards, and then give them care, referring to some HMOs who pay later and all that, or pay 10% for every care the patient receives. But I mean, so many patients don't rely on that. They pay out of pocket. So out of pocket payments, I mean, needs a lot of collaboration from the family members, because some diseases needs the family to be able to even go back and have some family meetings. I remember a case where, you know, they said, okay, we have 2 drug regimen. This one cost this one cost this. We can't break any of them in the month, in the whole year, and it's going to last for up to 1 day or so. So you need to go back home and everybody take a consensus. The family comes together and say, okay, we're going to pay for this drug and we are going to support this our patient till this patient receive this drug completely. And so in such situation, if you don't communicate to the family, if you don't engage them in what is happening, that patient may end up not receiving adequate care, because, I mean, someone has to bring up money. So out-of-pocket payment is part of the reason you must communicate to the patient and to their relatives. Another thing is, like I mentioned earlier, ethical legal issues. That when you communicate to this patient about what you're doing, each steps of the things you're doing, you're going to be helping allay what I call anxiety. Okay. Now, allaying the anxiety helps them to be fully aware of what is happening, to be fully aware that, okay, this doctor is planning this nurse is going to be doing this at this point in time. And so they are more relaxed with getting that information from you, that this is what is going to happen next. I mean, if a patient doesn't know what is going to happen next, you don't expect the patient to be relaxed, especially the family. Yeah. The patient is the one lying down there, maybe unconscious, doesn't even know what is happening. The very person who is anxious is the family member. So communicating effectively to the family member will also help reduce the anxiety that can actually lead to ethical legal issues, because some of the ethical legal issues I've seen in the hospital sometimes are born out of not just negligence, but misunderstanding, not understanding what's happening at when it's happening and how it's happening. So good communication, effective communication can never be overemphasized when it comes to giving adequate care. Now, what will anxiety do? Anxiety will lead to non-cooperation. A whole lot of times, I've seen a situation where parents want to come back, patient wants to come back and sign against medical advice. That's because they don't really understand what's happening. They are anxious. They feel you're not giving them enough care that they require. Sometimes they even use their phones. They Google a lot of things.
Google is not your doctor.
And I mean, it's not what they don't understand. Yeah. And so because they are doing all of those things, that's because they don't have confidence in you. Yes. And confidence can only be built if you're able to keep communicating to this patient. And that communication should also lead to teaching. Yeah. Should lead to teaching. Being able to teach your patients their condition, it's very 2% of the patient's problem, I can tell you, and their family relative problem. I mean, engaging them would have solved a whole lot of this problem, because if they have adequate knowledge
on what you're doing,
on what their disease condition is, on what the prognosis or outcome of this disease is, at every step, they will effectively engage with you. I can tell you. And I can tell you, every patient who were taught effectively progresses well. The outcome of their diseases are actually better, and it also saves you some stress as the healthcare worker. I mean, you meet a lot of patients. Let's say the University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital serves more than 6 million patients every year. I mean, so you can imagine having such number of staff serving a whole lot. So if you are able to teach a few of those people, it will help you. It will really help you to be able to discharge your care and do it very effectively. I can actually tell you. So what else to be considered in patient engagement is its ability for you to, of course, I mentioned it when I started talking about patient care, being prompt with the care. In as much as you are able to teach patients, communicate effectively, and so on, matching your words with action is important. If you have decided to actually carry out a particular care, go ahead and provide it. This is usually part of the problems that patients can actually face in the hospital. And some of these delays are due to short staffing and non-provision of medical materials in the hospital. So every hospital should always ensure that they have the materials to be able to engage with, so that the patient comes and then you are able to explain, able to teach, and all of that, and it's time to administer the drugs. They buy, to procure these, get these drugs, administer them. But if these things are not there, I think the patient begins to look at it that there are bridges in the line of care that I am supposed to receive. And the relative, of course, won't be very happy about how far their patient has actually been managing it. So I think these are the things that needs to really be considered when care for our patients.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Nurse OT. I hope you learned a lot from all of that was said, because I did. Now you know the kind of treatment you're supposed to receive at the hospital. So when you go, you can demand such treatment from the nurse assigned to you. But right now we'll be going on a short break, and when we come back, we'll be going right into the next segment on Doctor and Me. So sit tight. Welcome back from that short break. If you're just joining us, I am Valentina Lawrence, and this is Atn Health Forum, where we make a compilation on critical health issues designed to reach all segments of the society and prefer solutions through the instrumentality of medical professionals. We have today with us Nurse Victor OT. Now, right into the second segment of the show, which is Doctor and Me, we'll be talking about the attitudes of patients and what could cause them to react in such a manner. Although he has already almost told us everything. Now, as Victor, if a patient is unnecessarily rude to you as a doctor or a nurse on duty, maybe the patient is yelling on top of his or her voice, or demanding that a specific gender attends to him, or what we know as being sexist, how do you handle such a patient? And do you think or believe that there might be an underlying cause to such behavior?
Yes. Personally, I've seen this kind of things happen, and like I would always say, there are ways to do things in the hospital to help patients. First of all, understanding that this patient coming in anxious, they are sick, they're not well, so they need something to be done. It's a key issue to consider. So a patient walks in and then is all shouting, demanding care and all of that. First of all, that's why a number of us, I want to say that again. Make sure who is giving you care is trained.
Yeah.
Training is very important. Every one of us did psychology. Who is this patient coming in? What does this patient want? When you are able to ascertain that by being firm enough to ask, bold enough to actually ask this question, it helps you to know what line of action you want to take. The patient comes in, demands care, triaging. You're in emergency, just triage. The patient, okay, please, this is what we're doing at this point in time. This patient will come before you. Your case is easier than this one. If you were in this person's shoe, we will still do the same thing for you. It's important to always say those things. In fact, make patients see things in the light of the next patient, not in the light of you, the health workers. I mean, you are there to care for them, so that's what they believe in. But when you bring in this light and show them, let them see these things, it helps them calm down. In fact, sometimes they become very sympathetic of the next patient and, oh, don't worry, go ahead. Sometimes you see the patient go buy drugs that you're even looking for someone they feel is indigent who could not even provide for themselves. So I think being able to understand every patient is important. You will give adequate care. Now, I know that point where the patient is rude and the patient doesn't understand. Even when you've done all, you don't really necessarily need to engage with the patient. Be careful to allow your colleague. A second person step in solves a lot of problems, I can tell you. And we've resolved conflict in the hospital a lot of times with that. Even with what we call the best nurse, the best doctor, the best person on duty, you know, having that kind of altercation with the patient or the patient being rude with the person, we've resolved issue by allowing a next person step in to handle the matter. Once you see that kind of a thing, just withdraw yourself and allow either your senior or your colleague to take care of it. That patient will listen to that person more than the patient will listen to you. So we'll do that a lot.
Okay, I hope you heard all that was said. If that is you or you fall into this category, please do want to treat our doctors and nurses with kindness. I mean, they deserve it too, to be treated with respect, and they will in turn give you back. Right now, we're going on a short break. And when we come back, we'll be going to the last segment on Doctor Answers. Do also send in your questions. We'll get right at it. See ya. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Atn Health Forum, and right now we'll be going to the final segment on Doctor Answers. Nurse Victor, we have some questions for you, and this is coming from Rebecca from Ondo State. She says, hello, Nurse Victor. My name is Rebecca Silas. I tend to get upset and irritated easily. How do you care for someone who is sick without lashing out?
All right. Like I said, if they assign a patient to you, and I mean, every patient will not lash out to every healthcare worker. It's important. I mean, as a nurse, once you notice that patient who does not want to cooperate with you, do well to talk to your colleague about it so that another person takes care of that patient. I mean, the patient would not lash out at all times to different individuals. So that's what you do to actually help that situation. I've always applied that.
So what if the patient, what if the nurse is the person that is quick to anger? Maybe she cannot just, you know, sick people have a particular behavior, and like they reject a lot of stuff, you know, all those irritating things that comes with when you're being sick. What if the nurse can't stand it?
Can't stand it. But what will I say? That I've not had that, because I mean, you were called into a place to care. If there is a patient you can't stand, kindly talk to your colleague about it to help you take care of that patient at that time. It's important that the patient doesn't suffer for your own inadequacies. So if you understand that this is your weak point, you actually see or something, talk to the next person to help out. I do that a lot. If I look at a particular condition, a particular patient, I've not being very well with and all that, I just talk to the next person. Please, can you help me do this for this patient? And I don't mind taking your own patient, taking over your patient. And that helps. I mean, the patient must receive care. Yeah. That's the truth. So just find a way.
All right, that's okay. For Rebecca, I hope you heard what Nurse Victor had to say. Well, I'm so sorry to our other viewers who sent in their questions. We're behind time, so we cannot take your question today. But we'll definitely answer you. Just leave your question again in our comment section, and we'll do all to respond to you over there. But this is the lot we can take. Thank you very much. I hope you had a lovely time on the show, because I did, and I learned a lot. Thank you, Nurse Victor, for being on my show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Until we see you again on the next episode on Atn Health Forum, do well to take care. I am Valentina Lawrence. See ya.